what do you think? What's the biggest misconception about AI these days? I mean, uh, what people understand incorrectly or wrongly, I would say, in your opinion.
The one thing I think there's many things that people misunderstand or don't really,
Okay.
um, but I think the biggest misconception is the value of AI is where the value comes from, right? So, everyone sees like generative AI as being the big thing. Hey, I can get some output. I can get an email written. I can do something else. I think the real misconception is the power of AI is the understanding of context. So
Okay.
one of the things that we have built from the ground up is we have an agent that sits on top of all of these different sub agents that can hold
Mm,
state about a customer. So let's just use the example of I reach out to Sam and I say, "Hey, Sam, you owe me some money. Can you please pay me?" You write back and say, "Great, I just put an ACH in for transfer in. You should see the money for these three invoices tomorrow." In most tools, that just in SaaS tools, that just sits in that collector's inbox and just lives there. And so when the money comes in 5 days later, the person
all
who's
right.
applying cash has to then say, "What's this for?"
Okay.
And they reach out to the other human and say, "Hey, collector, do you have any information on this?" The human goes through their inbox. Maybe they're out of office. They don't know. When that email hits Instute, we immediately transfer that data over into the cash application tool. So it's ready to go and the other agent has state. And so I think the big misconception is that when new emails or new information comes in, how you update context and hold state, that's where a lot of the real value comes in AI. How do you
Mm,
like continually understand new changes but also pass information between these different workflows? I think that's the huge unlock here. So it's more about parsing intent and understanding and reasoning from a communication back to you more than it is generating a new email output. I think that's one area where people overlook sometimes, and that's where the real value is driven from.
I also want to learn people like about where AI sits. What I mean by this is that do you think AI just going to become one layer on top of the things that I have, CRM and etc., and you guys come in and just build on top of that, or do you think over time, basically, you guys could potentially replace everything, my CRM, then after that, my Excel sheet, then moving forward in the long term, maybe even some of my finance team, let's say, starting with the junior team members, maybe who knows? What do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting debate. We have some look, I think there's a lot of real value in ERPs, and I think a lot of I'll just use the ERP as an example, and CRM too, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
they're very embedded in workflows within a company. I think companies, the reason they don't change ERPs very often is there's a huge shift when you want to change your ERP, right? There's a lot of
Mhm,
things
mhm.
that happen on the ground, change management that requires, a lot of risk involved for your business, and that's why
Okay.
companies are sometimes hesitant to do that. I think that replacing that layer is going to take a long time. However, I'm surprised at the number of CFOs that are thinking in the long run, not the next 5 years, not the next, 6 years, but 10, 15 years from now. Well, I just have a database that becomes my ERP, and that database is mine. But then I have all these agentic workflows and AI agents that access that database and replace, you know, those different systems and UIs. It's a
Mhm.
really interesting question, and I think I don't have the answer, but I'm really curious to see how it plays out. I'm really curious to see what UI becomes in the future, right?
Yeah,
Because I
exactly.
think people are getting chatbot fatigue right now. They're no longer wanting to chat with all these different, bots that are the AI agents that are just, in the form of Chat GPT.
Mhm, mhm.
I think they want something different. And so I'm curious to see how UI morphs and modifies with that concept of like, do I need this ERP interface or is it really just this database? And then what does the interaction look like with that data? I'm with you. I'm curious to see what it looks like.